So I got to be honest with you guys. I was very excited last week to start Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. This week, I'm a little bit nervous. This week, if you're watching live, as you can tell, we are joined by someone very special, the humanitarian of the year, the person of the year, the game changer of the year, all of the year awards that someone might win for being a wonderful person. Scott Fish has won them. He is with us today, here with me and Dave Richard. Scott, thank you.
What's going on? Thank you. What's going on? Yeah, what doesn't get reported is how much I bribed those places to give me those awards. So really, actually, what I'm just doing is I'm trying to build up all this credibility in that area so that I can perform the greatest heel turn anyone has ever seen at some point. That's my plan.
I'm greatly looking forward to that. I know Dave is greatly looking forward to that. I want to start this off just a little bit different. And we'll do this when we have guests, because I don't want to wait until the 30th minute, the 35th minute to let people talk about what they do. And one of the reasons, maybe the major reason that you've won some of these awards is the work that you've done through Fantasy Cares, which I know has kind of taken a step forward over the last 12 months. And I want to give you a second before we're going to get into all the dynasty talk. We're going to break down the latest news. We're going to go over the mock draft, but I want to give you just a couple of minutes to tell people what Fantasy Cares is all about, if they've been living under a rock, and how they can participate.
Yeah, sure. Fantasy Cares is this thing that's really grown over the years. At one point, it was just this toy drive fundraiser on GoFundMe. Then it was kind of a movement, like a mindset I was trying to push out there on all these shows. Then it went to being a nonprofit, and now it's officially a 501c3, registered national charity, it's wonderful to have taken those steps. And thank you, Heath, for being on the board of that 501c3. I really appreciate that and all the work you put into that and whatnot. It's just a wonderful thing. It's really good to get out there and be able to do a lot of good for a lot of different charities and really just push that, inspire people to maybe use our hobby for a little bit of good out there.
And I know, Dave, you and I actually went shopping together last year to buy some toys for Tots.
We did, and you've been doing this for years. Heath does all kinds of great stuff for the community, both in fantasy and in South Florida. And that inspired me to just started to dip my toe into it a little bit, because I don't do that much for the community. And I know I can be better. So the very first thing I did was to ask Heath, when's the next Fantasy Cares toy shopping? And he told me, and I showed up, and you didn't lie to me. You were actually there, and you let me buy some scooters for some kids. And I think I tried to talk you into buying a Nintendo Switch, and maybe we did. I don't remember.
I think we bought a few Switches,
but it felt good.
It was the two of us and Kenny from RotoWare. I've been shopping with Kenny from RotoWare for the last 4 years. He's a great Fantasy Cares partner, and there will be, I would say, go on Twitter, follow Fantasy Cares, follow Scott, obviously, at ScottFish24, and just look. There are going to be more opportunities this year than there have ever been in the past to participate in this movement. We'll call it.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm glad that you picked up things like Switches. A few years ago, we donated a bunch of gaming systems to a children's terminal care ward at a hospital here in Minnesota. But mostly when you donate money and stuff to Toys for Tots, they have like price limits that when they go out and do shopping, but we can get large ticket items and give them to them, something that they can't do if you just donate money to them. So I appreciate when I see things like that. So a few kids, if you got a few Switches, a few kids are going to have some really amazing Christmases last year, or had some really amazing ones. That's great.
We appreciate you, Scott. We appreciate you being here. We're going to jump right into the Dynasty talk. And as we get this podcast started, we're kind of asking 3 questions of each of our guests at the very top. And you've seen these questions in the past. I expect you have some fantastic answers. One of them you've been hinting about on Twitter. I'm hoping you're just going to let it all out. What is, someone is starting a new Dynasty League today. What is the one rule you would suggest?
I guess the one rule is kind of, first off, it's almost a 2-parter, but have bylaws. Just make sure you have bylaws to cover a bunch of different things. And Ryan and I always talk about this. these are kind of gonna go hand in hand, these first two questions. But Ryan and I have always talked about this on our podcast, Commission Impossible, where when you want to create a league, you either create a league you want to with a set of rules you want to, and then find the people who want to play in that format, or you find the group of people that you want to play with, and then you all just kind of figure out the rules. We found that when you go half on either one of those scales, that's when problems start to arise. People have their, own opinions of things they want to change in your, but go one of those two routes. Create the league you want to and find people, or find the people you want to play with, and y'all make the league that you think will be fun for each other. But the biggest thing that I always try to push people need with their bylaws is a best interest clause at the end that basically says should, circumstances, issues, problems arise where there's not a remedy stated in the rules, the commissioner has the right to, the right to take whatever action they deem necessary, in the spirit of in what might be the spirit of the rules or whatever. That closes off a lot of potential loophole scams, like people trying to do things that aren't explicitly stated, but trying to squeeze through loopholes or whatever, or do something that's not in the rules. You're like, well, this is not right. I got this best interest of the league clause to kind of cover myself for that.
See, Dave, I was wanting to ask Scott these questions because I know he's a lot better commissioner than I am. The one thing I would like for you to not do is tell him about any of my commissioner misadventures over the last few years. We're going to keep this all
okay. Pizza will buy you that type of secrecy.
Yeah. So number 2, what is the biggest dynasty pitfall? This is the thing that I'm trying to get Scott in trouble, but I don't think he's going to fall for it. And how can commissioners avoid it?
No, you're absolutely fine with that. And it's the kind of thing that I do feel I need to start talking about out there so that people know and are aware it's become a thing. But I mean, you talked about it a little bit last week, how if you're in a league and you trade future draft picks, you should pay for that. You should actually be the owner of those picks to be able to trade those picks. You should, if you're going to trade your future second or first or whatever, you should be the person who's going to be running the team. But this isn't even a pitfall, and I'm not sure exactly what commissioners can do in this situation outside of, make the league have a designed end, or, and I'm teasing a little here, but make the league have a designed end. Maybe, make a dynasty league that's 4 or 5 years, and then you decide whether or not to keep going afterwards. It ends on a double champion, something like that. But the biggest problem I see in dynasty right now is, and it's pretty rampant. Talk to a lot of commissioners. Redrafters have really infiltrated dynasty over the last year or two.
Thankfully, and we're glad about that. Yeah.
Kind of.
You should be.
I don't mind this, like, long-term, great. Early term, not so much, but for commissioners, not at all. This is the bad way. Redrafters, instead, there's a big group of redrafters that instead of playing redraft leagues against 11 people who are going to battle you week in, week out, they'll join a dynasty startup knowing that 3, 4, 5 of those guys are going to play young and not compete year one. They will go all out to win in year one, drop the team because they're playing a redraft league, but they're playing it in a dynasty startup. So that's a big reason why you want to make sure they pay for those future picks. But we've also seen another thing with these redrafters. They're not only playing 1 year redraft style, let's try to win the league and leave. They are paying for the next year to trade those picks. They're like, I will pay the extra $50 to go trade my picks for Kelsey and then leave anyway. So the team has no picks and they just orphaned the team. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've seen in Dynasty lately. And it's more popular in leagues where you don't know each other well enough.
Yes.
Right. I think the biggest thing commissioners need to do is vet your people. That's where I was going with this whole thing, is vet the people you're bringing in and make sure you have a good group. Don't just randomly join with people you don't know. And if you are, you should be playing with commissioners that really know how to take care of the league with those orphans that might happen.
So this is what you're experiencing on your platform, Scott, not necessarily
not just my platform. not just my
You're
platform.
hearing about it from commissioners all over the place.
Yes, I kept seeing early in the offseason a bunch of people tweeting, I need to fill this league. I need to fill this orphan. It's already been paid for. And I'm like, why is that? Why is this team with no picks already paid for, being dropped, etc.? And I started talking to these commissioners one by one, checking it out, and talking to a buddy of mine who runs about 15 leagues. And he's like, it's all over. Apparently people are joining dynasty startups with the intention to just win. And sometimes they will even pay for next year, trade all the picks. They don't want to play the year that they don't have any picks. They're done. They won. They got their investment. They got their money.
But I do think that like a lot that's made easier by that pay for their picks.
Absolutely.
Because I'm so much more interested in taking over a team with no picks this year if it's free. if I can just like this year, I'm not expected to win. I don't have to invest anything. I'll just, clean out the roster, trade for all the 2024 picks that I can get. Well, I'm as I've said on this show before, I'm perfectly fine with a tanking year, no problem at all. Let's get a little bit
especially
more.
If it's paid for. But my main point is vet your owners, vet your managers, vet your managers that you bring in. That's the biggest pitfall. You want to play with good people.
Who is the one player in Dynasty that you are buying today?
Oh man, we're gonna go long. That opening segment is already 10 minutes in. So I'm generally a buy high guy. I am the guy that will overpay for the guys I want, and I don't care if they're like really hyped right now. I'm the guy who will pay a ton for Justin Jefferson just to have him for a couple of years because I'm usually playing to win now. I think a guy right now that I will overpay for and buy high on, a guy I'm buying in Dynasty right now is Jameson Williams. I feel like he's
it's my answer.
Dave doesn't. Oh, okay. Then you can speak for me if you want, but it's a high flying scoring offense.
No. This one's all you. Go for it.
That was, first in the league in scoring for quite a while. I think they ended 5th in the league in scoring. They brought Ben Johnson back. I feel like the defenses in that division have taken some hits, especially my Vikings. DJ Chark is gone and those snaps will be gone. Granted, they did bring Marvin Jones back and whatnot, but he should be on the outside by himself this year. A year plus post that ACL championship game injury he had, got his feet a little wet last year. I think that speed, that 4.3, maybe even 4.2s, but 4.3 speed is going to come back this year. He's got, a year under his belt, more confidence. He'll get a full off season of OTAs and practices and preseasons. Him in that offense with a full complement of snaps. I feel like he's going in the 5th or 6th round of dynasty startups right now. And I will take that all day and I'm going to buy him if I'm able to.
So I think the best way to look at him, Dave, is look at him as if he is a part of this draft class. So if you're trading for Jameson Williams, what 2023 rookie pick are you willing to give up? And maybe there's two answers. Like, what's the one you'll go up to as the most, and what's the one you're going to start with as an offer?
I think you've got to go all the way up to the 102. Wow. I think if he was available in this draft class, line him up next to Jaxon Smith-Njigba.
We're going to talk about a Superflex draft today. Would you give the 102 in a Superflex?
It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different if it's Superflex, but it might come down to need there. But I view Jameson Williams as somebody who can be very impactful for fantasy football. And if you're buying him now, then you missed the full year where he did nothing to help your dynasty team. You're going to get him at his very best, theoretically, starting in 2024. And the situation's only going to get better. The fundamentals of the Lions are certainly to run the football, but they're going to keep building that offensive line strong. They're eventually going to find a quarterback to replace Jared Goff. That dude hopefully will have just as strong of an arm, if not an even stronger arm, but hopefully a penchant and a willingness to throw deep. And I'm sure they're going to use Jameson Williams as more than just a deep threat guy. Get him the ball on screens, slants, let him beat those Vikings cornerbacks right off the snap, catch the football, and then break away for long catch and runs. He's got elite upside. Absolutely the type of wide receiver that I would go after. And yes, if I had to give up the 102 in a 1 QB league, I would do it. In a 2 QB league, depends how bad I need one of these quarterbacks in this draft.
So, Scott, you thought you were the Jameson Williams guy. Well, Dave's saying 102 in a
102 is
league.
pretty high. I mean, you do at the current moment have the benefit of knowing Jameson Williams' landing spot. You could technically, if you're throwing him in this class, he's with the Lions. Even to Dave's point about the quarterback thing, I mean, look at what Jared Goff did with Brandon Cooks. Like, I mean, if you're getting that out of Jameson Williams, I'm pretty like a true speed guy on the outside like that. Like,
sure,
I kind of like that.
Yeah, you might get better than that, Scott.
1-2 feels high, but if you really love JMO, you can do it. But I wouldn't have much of a problem in Superflex. No, I'd rather have one of the quarterbacks. We'll talk about that later. But in 1 QB, as Dave said, I can see it. I'm fine with it. I don't think it's that much of an overpay. I think
you guys are a little bit crazy. I'd go 1.6 in Superflex. I think I'd go 1.4.
You're not getting them. You're not.
I feel like the answer's in the middle. I feel like the answer's somewhere in the middle of those two.
Right. So we're gonna get to the news, and I put this in scare quotes because not a lot of news lately. Thankfully, most of the news revolves around the Minnesota Vikings, or at least former Minnesota Vikings, and we have the Vikings expert here. I thought one of the strangest things to come out over the weekend was this report that the Vikings were pursuing David Montgomery. Mm-hmm. I'd kind of assumed when Dalvin Cook put the highlight video of himself out there that it was bad news for Alexander Mattison when he re-signed with the Vikings. But then I saw that there's some clause in Cook's contract that the shoulder surgery really kind of threw this whole thing off, and the Vikings would have had to pay him $2 million more to cut him before he can fail a physical. Yep, once he can pass a physical, they can cut him for less money. So my question to you, Scott, is like these reports, do you think Dalvin Cook's gone once he's healthy?
Well, I can tell you the noise up here last year, there was a decent amount of noise about getting rid of Dalvin Cook because Dalvin Cook or Madison, because they really like the guys behind them. They like what Ty Chandler and Kenny Nwangu can do. It can do with the ball in their hands in space. I don't know though, honestly, with Dalvin Cook, now that they didn't get David Montgomery, they got Madison back. I could see it. I honestly don't know though. I'm not hearing a lot. It is shedding $10 million, but we already shed a bunch of those millions that we needed to. Sadly, a lot on the defensive side that Dave brought up with Jameson Williams, who torched us for a 41-yard touchdown on his first catch of his life in the NFL. But personally, I don't think he's gone once healthy, because I think they would have wanted to cut him earlier when they were shedding all that cap elsewhere on the team, and they've already done that shedding.
Okay, Dave, if Dalvin Cook is sent away, Alexander Mattison is what in Dynasty?
He's a theoretical 1 to 3 year starter for your fantasy team.
Top 20 Dynasty running back?
Yeah, I think he'd make the cut toward the 20 mark, but right around there. And I was thinking about him more for redraft, but what podcast are we on today? Oh, Dynasty, so of course. Maybe right around 20th, because I think they can squeeze a few good years out of him. But I think if they're getting rid of Dalvin Cook, they're going to bring in another running back and not necessarily lean too heavily on Ty Chandler or Nwangu, like Scott brought up. I think Nwangu might be best on special teams.
Absolutely.
And Chandler's got some potential, but he was an older draft pick when they took him. So if they're going to use him, they got to get started now. I think next year is the year where Dalvin Cook is off the Vikings, because that's when the big salary cap savings come into play. My guess is that they missed on Montgomery, and he would have been a cheaper option than Dalvin Cook, and theoretically a healthier one because of Cook's shoulder. My guess is they ride with Dalvin one more year, and then they move on from him for sure next year because his cap number is so high.
Yep. Someone in the chat has first off said Alexander Mattison is Dalvin light, and second off offered to eat a full loaf of bread if we get to 100 likes. Please smash the like button. We're gonna get to 100 likes quickly. I hope
I care about people, man. I don't want him to do that.
I hope you like bread. It'd be bad news for me if I ate a full loaf of bread. One more Vikings news note: former Viking Irv Smith, perpetual breakout candidate Irv Smith, has signed a very low dollar deal with the Cincinnati Bengals, but for now looks like the Hayden Hurst replacement. Is he a post-type sleeper, Scott?
No. I mean, I'll root for him. I constantly, like, I've wanted him to be a thing for years. And, I thought coming out of college that he would be a thing. But I don't view it as a great landing spot, to be completely honest. The top tight ends for fantasy are usually like the 1 or 2 option on their team. Pretty rarely the 3. It can happen, but it's pretty rare. They usually, when they're not the 1 or the 2, which he would not be on the Bengals, not even close, they're pretty touchdown dependent. They're pretty inconsistent. Even in a high octane offense, I think his upside is closer to like, the Dawson Knox area where you're hoping for a few games and you're hoping for like an 8 touchdown year out of nowhere. That's I think his upside.
The Dawson Knox range is exactly right, Dave. I had Irv Smith at tight end 15 in Dynasty last March. He had dropped down to around tight end 26. He moved back up into the teens, but the bar's really low to be a top 20 tight end in Dynasty. There will be a couple of guys that will pass him. I think the biggest risk is, do the Bengals also draft a tight end to go along with Irv Smith?
It's a good year.
They could do that, or they could wait a year to do that. I think he's going to be a streamer. And so if that's the case, let's see who the Bengals play in weeks 1 and 2. If the matchups are good, then you're going to take Irv Smith with one of your last 3 picks. Here's a stat for you. Burrow threw 4% of his passes or fewer to tight ends in each of his 3 seasons. You'd normally like a percentage closer to 18 to 20 or higher, 18% or higher to a tight end from a quarterback. 15.4. It's stream territory. That's what he is.
And Irv Smith isn't like an upgrade, a huge upgrade to what they had, where you're like, oh, he's going to force the issue up to 18%. Right. Like he's just moving into that role.
I mean, he is more athletic than Hayden Hurst, but you might do a little bit more after the catch. He's going to have more touchdown luck than Hurst did last year. We are about ready for our mock draft review, but first, you should go to CBS Sports. You should click on the fantasy tab. You should click on the football tab. You should go on the far right side and look for Dynasty Central. Last week, we updated all of our Dynasty rankings on that tab. We gave you a new trade chart. There is actually a link to last week's YouTube show. This week's show will be on that landing page. Also, we will have a mock draft review in the written form on that landing page later this week. Also, please smash the like button. I'm not sure if anybody's eaten a loaf of bread yet, but that would be pretty cool. So we did yesterday a Superflex rookie-only mock draft, just 2 rounds. We'll expand it to 3 rounds once we get past the NFL draft, once we have landing spots. If we went in the 3rd round right now, half those guys might not get drafted. So we will tell you our favorite players who didn't get drafted. But let's start by taking a look at round 1. I thought it was interesting. Yes, it's Superflex. Yes, Bijan Robinson still went number 1. There did not seem to be much debate about that. The next 3 picks, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, that's kind of a surprise. CJ Stroud, so the 3 quarterbacks. I think you'll often see 3 of those quarterbacks in the first 4 picks. Gibbs was the next running back taken at 5. JSN, the first wide receiver taken by Dave at pick number 6. We'll start right there. And Scott, I want you to know, does it matter what position you need in a Superflex rookie only mock, or is it Bijan number 1? I don't care.
For me, I see in Dynasty, I don't really draft for need quite as much as, I don't believe. I'd rather draft the talent and have a better trade asset potentially later. The Bijan 1 question in Superflex, I think really comes down for me. Did you earn it? Did you earn that 101? Like, is your team really, really bad? If so, I might lean the quarterback because just the long-term value of having that quarterback. And if they hit, you could have not only that, but in Superflex, the cheapest time you will ever be able to get a quarterback is in a startup or a rookie draft. They cost exponentially more once they're a good quarterback in the NFL and you're trying to trade another team for them. So I might lean the quarterback if you legitimately earned it. I guess the problem right now is there's 3 and landing spot could mean a lot for these 3. And everybody has their different take on which is the right one. But if you traded for the 1, I'm probably taking Bijan most of the time.
Yeah, I think like the one thing I would say is like if you're a team who truly earned the one and you're terrible, then those quarterbacks are going to play maybe 3 times as long as Bijan does. You might,
Yeah.
but Bijan's also young enough and good enough that I'm probably still like I'm probably not taking a quarterback over him. I'm probably just reaching out to one of those teams with pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, and trying to trade down so I can get the running back or get the quarterback, and they can have the running back. Dave, we saw the quarterbacks. I mentioned this, the order: Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. Jamie took Anthony Richardson. He said yesterday on FFT that right now Richardson is his number 1 quarterback in fantasy, according to rookie only leagues. Now he may or may not have been wearing a Gator hat when he said that. How would you rank these 3 quarterbacks, and how much is landing spot going to make a difference? Let's assuming they're all taking the top 5.
Yeah, landing spot's definitely going to make a difference for these guys. And so obviously this can all change. All of this could change based on the draft. But for fantasy, I agree with Jamie. Richardson's number 1. He's got the most upside for fantasy of any quarterback in this draft. If fantasy football didn't count rushing stats, I don't know if he'd be 4th because his passing it's got a long way to go. I think Levis is closer than he is. And I know that Stroud and Bryce Young are closer than he is as far as passing. But the rushing aspect of his game is something that none of the top 4 quarterbacks have at his level. And a smart NFL team would utilize those legs. If they played him right away, I think he'd benefit. I think he'd be able to do well as a runner. But passing-wise, I think he'd get into a lot of trouble. So the idea with Richardson is you're taking him first with the long view in mind. Hopefully he goes to a team. Detroit would be an amazing landing spot for any of these quarterbacks, but certainly for Richardson because they've got a good coaching staff there and they've got time. So Richardson could spend the year on the bench, learning the offense, maybe playing here and there over the course of the season, maybe a specific package for him. Certainly in the preseason and definitely in practice, he'd get reps that way and they would develop him. And if they can improve his technique, really, you've heard a lot about his footwork. I think it's legit. His footwork's really not great. And it hasn't really been great for 7 years. That's a story for a different time. But if a coaching staff can improve it, yes, the upside is hugest. I just made up that word for Anthony Richardson.
And I understand in a 1 quarterback league why that's all anybody cares about. I've preached in a 1 quarterback league, that's all you should care about. But I do have a problem with Richardson, especially if he's not the first pick, and I don't think he's going to be, but maybe he will. But I do have a problem with him as the clear number 1 quarterback in a Superflex league because I don't think his floor is any higher than Malik Willis. I think there is a legitimate chance that he's so bad at the actual playing quarterback part that he does, like, one of the great benefits of a top 5 quarterback on your dynasty roster, and people said this about Trey Lance and it didn't come true. People said this about Zach Wilson, it didn't come true, but it's usually true. If you're a top 5 quarterback, you're going to get to start for like 3 years. The team's going to give you every opportunity to be good. I think Richardson, I agree with everything you said about the upside, and in a 1 quarterback league, I don't think there's any question that upside is really all that matters. But in a Superflex league, I'm drafting a quarterback 1st overall, 2nd overall, 3rd overall in my rookie draft, and he legitimately might not ever have a full season as a starting quarterback.
What's the upside for the alternatives then? Because if we're passing on Richardson because we're worried about the downside and we want a safe quarterback, are we drafting a guy that could end up being a number 2 QB with the 103?
Well, I think Stroud and Bryce Young both have top 12 upside easily.
Do they have top 5?
I don't think we know. I mean, with Stroud in particular, like do you remember how little the Ohio State used Justin Fields as a rusher? And then he goes to the combine and he's like one of the fastest quarterbacks ever. And then
I agree with you. This is why Stroud is second for me. Yes. Could see Stroud
similar with Stroud, how he went to the national championship game and used his legs a lot more than he had for a decent amount of the season.
It's true. That's true. But he didn't run a lot in high school. So right. I wonder if that's – I don't think it's a part of his profile that we say, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to, rush for 600 yards and 6 touchdowns every year.
Okay, so Scott, when you look at
he is capable of the Dak Prescott rushing numbers, 200, 300 yards, 2-3 touchdowns.
When you look at this this first round here, Scott, you see after JSN, there's a couple of receivers in Quentin Johnson and Jordan Addison. There's that fourth quarterback, Will Levis, who knows what to do with him. But Gibbs, the only running back besides Bijan in the first 9 picks.
Yep.
Do you think that there is, like, I know we have a clear top tier with just one running back.
Yep.
Is there a clear second tier with just one running back?
Yeah, weirdly for me, it's a one-man first tier and a one-man second tier, and and I don't think the drop off from him to the Charbonnet types is that big, because Zach can, do it all too. He's a pass catcher, etc. But Gibbs, he's just got that, based on his Alabama, what he did at Alabama. I just feel like he can be a full, 3 down bell cow back that we almost never see anymore in the NFL. There used to be 15 of them. Now there's 6, I feel like he has that possible upside of being, and even if he's not a full-time back, he could be what Eckler is. He could be what Kamara is, where he's so hyper efficient with his touches that even if he's not the full workload, 60%, 65% back, he can do a ton with it. I have him basically on a tier on his own right after Bijan.
Nice. Now, we finished the first round with Zach Charbonnet, Zay Flowers, Zach Evans. And that's kind of how I feel about rookie drafts this year after the first 7 picks. But Dave, I wanted to ask you, there were 4 or 5 wide receivers there in the first round after JSN. I feel like it's going to be pretty clear, unless the landing spot's just awful, that he's going to be the consensus wide receiver 1. Do you have, like Gibbs at running back, a clear wide receiver 2 behind him? Or is it kind of a jumble of guys and we need to see landing spot first?
You said Gibbs as the clear.
No, I'm saying is there Gibbs is the clear number 2 running back we just talked about. I think
Yes.
JSN will be wide receiver 1. Is there
I
a
agree.
clear number 2 wide receiver?
No, I don't think there is yet. I think you can make the case for Addison. You can make the case for Johnston. You can make the case for Zay Flowers. I think those are going to be the guys, but I really think we're going to have to wait till after the draft and see who gets in a spot where they can be impactful right away.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way. I'm pretty excited in 1 quarterback leagues about that top 3 of Robinson, Gibbs, and JSN. And obviously in a Superflex draft like this, we've got a top 6. I like Quentin Johnson. He's my number 2 right now, but draft capital could certainly change that. I feel okay about the first 7. Like I said, I'm not super excited about the end of that first round. I don't mind the idea of trading down from that into the second round and trying to pick up additional assets, because there are some running backs who are going to be there in round 2 who I think are going to have that immediate type impact that might push a contender over the top. I think Zach Evans could be one of those if he gets the opportunity this year. It's just about whether he can be healthy. But when we turn the page and we start to look at the round 2 picks, we also see a few more of those guys. Now, it starts off with Josh Downs, a wide receiver out of North Carolina. Then the second pick, Michael Mayer. We got the first tight end off the board. Scott, we see these guys come off. I think there was actually a second tight end that came off before your pick. Yeah, Dave took Dalton Kincaid. How happy were you that those tight ends were taken off the board and the running back that fell to you?
I was happy about that. I was mad Downs didn't get to me. I like Downs a lot, and he seems to be creeping up to the 1-2 corner now. I really like Downs. But you asked this of me earlier, not on the show, but like outside the show, that I'm such a win now player, as I've mentioned before in Dynasty. Like I'm trying to win every year and backfill my roster with young talent, that I'm not drafting tight ends as much as really almost ever anymore in Dynasty rookie drafts. Even in a great year with 6 of them, they can be great. Don't get me wrong. But I loved A-Chain making it to me in the second. I did a mock with the footballers a week or so ago where he went in the first. He's small. Don't love that part. But he once again, just like we were talking about with Gibbs, he can do it all. He had 230 plus touches at A&M last year, 3 to 4 catches per game. Yes, he's small, but he's kind of a little bowling ball. He's explosively fast. Everybody knows that. We've seen the numbers, but he's also sometimes when he's trying to hit a gap, he's like a little bowling ball. I know he's like 5'9", but he's like 190 pounds.
He's a bocce ball.
Yeah, sure, Abachi. If that becomes his nickname, that'll be amazing. A-Chain is good enough. Like his name is already a good enough nickname. But yeah, I really liked getting him there. I think if he wasn't there, I might have thought about a guy like Mims, but I really like getting A-Chain there.
Yeah, I think I'm at the point now where I'm not taking a tight end in a rookie draft until there are no more running backs or wide receivers that I could conceivably convince myself might help. Just because, like, even first round tight ends haven't been a particularly good bet.
Is that a pitch shot?
That was not a pitch
Well,
shot.
that's one of them.
That's not a shot at us taking this rookie and making him the number one player in Dynasty for 2 years before he justifies it. By the way, perfectly happy buying some Kyle Pitts right now. I think the best year of his career is probably coming. And I think you can do that with a lot of these. If you really like a rookie tight end, set a reminder on your phone for 18 months down the road to go trade for them, because they're going to be cheaper than what they cost you in this rookie draft probably.
Studies have been done on do tight ends trade value go up or down after 1 year, and it shows it actually stays pretty flat, but then after the second year, if they don't perform, that's where it starts to tail. So the 18 months thing is that's a good point.
Okay, so we're going to finish off with kind of some rapid fire here. I was reading off all the names and I realized, everybody who can see this can see the screen. This is not in the podcast form. This is in the YouTube form. I don't need to read you every single name. If you want a full readout of every single name, again, you can go to the Dynasty landing page later this afternoon, and you'll see this mock draft and the full results up, including everyone who participated in the draft. Appreciate their help. Let's go Scott, Dave, Heath. Favorite pick from this final 6 picks of round 2?
Yeah, and I assume you can't pick your own, but maybe you can. I don't know, but I'm going to go with Roschon Johnson. Also, I was in that footballers mock. Josh Norris was in that, and he took Roschon Johnson in the first round. A lot of guys I really respect their film work. Really like Roschon Johnson. I like what I've seen. He looked great at the Senior Bowl before breaking the bone in his hand. He looked good at the combine, looked explosive. I'm obviously not worried about the hand. To get him at, I believe he went 212 in this, like the last pick of the second round.
My
that
pick,
feels like your pick. That feels like a really good grab for that late.
Yeah, I think I've heard some people speculate that he might be RB3 in this class for them. Mm-hmm. So it is possible to be stuck behind a generational running back in college and just not get quite as much exposure. We have seen that before in the NFL. Dave,
Miles Sanders was that guy.
Dave, you are more than welcome to choose the same pick or a different pick. Favorite pick from the final 6?
From the final 6 in a super flex, I think seeing Hendon Hooker go toward the end of round 2 was really good value. He is older. He's 25, and he's coming off a torn ACL, so he's probably not going to play much this year. But how is he not in that same type of mold that we talked about for Anthony Richardson, where he gets a year to develop a little bit further, maybe learns how to read the full field instead of half field like he did at Tennessee, maybe plays in an offense that's tailored to his strengths a little bit more, which is the spread, and he could end up being productive. And if he continues to run like he did in college, then he could end up being the absolute steal of this Superflex.
I think the real key for him, because we've got a lot of smoke on Hendon Hooker over the last couple of weeks, and it's probably going to continue. It is 100% lying season. If these rumors that he's going to sneak into the first round are true, he's not going to be available with the 11th pick of the second round.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think the most mocked one I've seen, and maybe it's because I'm up here and they will not stop talking about up here, is Hendon Hooker to Minnesota, because they turned down Kirk Cousins' offer to add an extra year at a discount. They're like, no, we're good. We want a rookie contract. And if they want a rookie contract and a guy who's willing to sit for a year and a late pick in the first round, I mean, like, all of that seems to mesh up with what you guys just said.
So you guys took my 2 favorite picks. I loved Hendon Hooker and Roschon Johnson. They're one of those picks I made. So I will start off the favorite player who didn't get drafted. Again, you guys can copy this same player if you want. Sure. But Deuce Vaughn is someone who, if Johnson hadn't
Wish he was
been there,
bigger.
I had kind of penciled him in as my final pick in this draft. I don't know. Again, it'll depend on when he gets drafted. I could see him being a 3rd round pick in rookie drafts, but just like that type of explosiveness. I know he's tiny, he's 5'6", whatever. That type of explosiveness, that type of change of direction, that type of playmaking will play in the NFL if he gets. I almost feel like it's a benefit, and I said this on the Football Guys Dynasty show last week. When you are such an outlier like he is, unless he just falls way, way late, the team that takes him is going to be okay with that. That size problem is not going to be a hurdle for the team that takes him. In fact, they're going to be focusing on his positives. So I do think Deuce Vaughn could be a big-time riser if he gets the right landing spot. Scott, who was your favorite player who did not get drafted?
Yeah, I really like Deuce Vaughn as a 3rd round pick. I'm gonna go with the guy that's gotten a lot of hype recently, especially after he ran his pro day in the late 4.2s, low 4.3s, apparently at 40 unofficial, and that's Izzy Ibenakanda. 5'11", 215, big, strong guy, 93rd percentile speed score, 97th percentile burst score. And those metrics were even before we knew he could run that fast. A lot of hype out there, but just when I'm drafting in the 3rd and 4th round, I want the really raw talent, explosive guys that could hit over the, safe, secure, like he's an okay vanilla player that's going to be productive. I'd rather get the super raw talented, super talented guy, super athletic guy that might actually, elevate himself at the next level.
And I just want a round of applause for Scott Fish, just putting it all out there with the pronunciation. I've gotten to the part of draft prep where I'm really good with the names on paper. But there's a few names that I see and I'm like, oh, I've not said that name out loud yet. I'm not even sure I've heard anyone say that name out loud more than once. I'm not going to say that name yet. Dave, who was your favorite player who did not get drafted?
You'll call him Izzy A. Ibenakanda was who I was going to certainly say. The only other name that was really on my radar was Sam Laporta, who's the Iowa tight end. And it's really just because he's an Iowa tight end. And you know that the track record of those guys is, sorry, Noah fan, other than you, it's really, really good. And, Fant can make some plays in fantasy too. But 4.6 speed, pretty big hands, pretty good size. Definitely the type of player that I don't mind targeting at the tight end position in round 3 of rookie-only drafts.
Now we did this rookie draft before the NFL draft. Not something I personally like to do with real drafts, like to do it with mocks because it's good to get a feel for how we feel about these guys before we let landing spot mess everything up. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But we did have a question in the chat. Someone said they were trying to move their rookie draft to August from June. They want to know how you feel about rookie drafts being done so early. Scott, Dave, you guys can go. We'll go Scott, then Dave. But when is your preferred time to do your rookie draft?
If you're starting with me, I prefer about either a couple days after or even a week after if you have some more casual people in your league. But I prefer within a week or so of the NFL draft. I like having it right there. And most of my leagues usually have like a fun free agent like auction type thing later in the off season for that. But I like to get them on the rosters. I like to keep the fun going right there in May.
I agree. I think that's when everybody's dialed in the most too. If you go and you wait until August, some people might not be as excited. I just think the most attention is right there, right after the draft. Get it going that week after.
Yeah, I've got way. I don't know about you. Like, what industry do you guys work in? I've got way too much going on the week after the NFL draft to be doing rookie drafts for my leagues also. So like the second week, I would be perfectly happy with it. Scott.
I have 1,148 dynasty leagues that I run that have their rookie drafts starting May 8th. That's what I'm doing that week.
1,000.
You're paying attention to those leagues.
I'm managing 1,100 plus rookie drafts that week.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us. Give us just in a very short period of time how people can find you, where they can find Fantasy Cares. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. at Scottfish24 on all the platforms, the Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, Scottfish24. Scottfishbowl.com. You can sign up, maybe play with these guys, maybe in a live event in Fort Lauderdale. What do we think, guys? We want to have a live event in Fort Lauderdale with you guys there?
I like it. Let's go. I joked around with you, Scott, about having one at my house.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, I wonder if I could actually pull it off. And then I thought about my wife. Like,
no, I did. I booked it with
for
your
11
wife.
weeks.
She's good with it. We're gonna
Weird
have
quote,
it
but okay.
No,
if she's okay with it, I
no.
think it would be funny as
There
hell.
was
Like people sitting all over my house doing a draft.
When we put together the first season highlight reel for Fantasy Football Today Dynasty, I booked it with your wife. We'll be towards the very top of the quote list from our guests. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Yeah, I just like get first off. Lastly, though, fantasycares.org, you can donate there. But secondly, I just like the idea of Dave's wife like booking reservations for their house. Just that thought is funny to me.
That is fantastic.
I don't know
Thank
what
you
I would
guys.
have to.
Yep.
give
Thank
back
you
in
for everybody
return
who
in order for her to
watched,
pull that.
and we'll see you next Tuesday.